Insights Pod is brought to you by BigCommerce. BigCommerce is a leading open SaaS and composable e-commerce platform that empowers brands and retailers of all sizes to build, innovate, and grow their businesses online. BigCommerce provides its customers sophisticated enterprise-grade functionality, customization, and performance with simplicity and ease of use. Tens of thousands of B2B and B2C companies across 150 countries and numerous industries rely on BigCommerce, including United Aqua Group, Coldwater Creek, Harvey Nichols, King Arthur Baking Company, and MKM Building Supplies. For more information, please visit bigcommerce.co.uk. Thank you again to BigCommerce for their support.
Welcome to the third edition of our Insights Pod. Nice to see you again, Lisa.
Nice to see you again, Tom.
So today we have quite a lot of content, but we're also joined by a guest on this edition, I nearly said BMA. That's a faux pas. We'll come back to more on that later in the pod. By the Bathroom Association's Technical Director, Andy McLean. Hi, Andy.
Hello.
Welcome, Andy. Your first podcast.
I know. It's
a
little bit scary, but we'll get there.
It's okay. Your technical knowledge will guide us through.
So, Lisa, what are we covering today?
Okay, so we'll go through, obviously, the contents in the next edition of Insights, which will be in people's inboxes very, very soon. We will go through the normal sort of content within the publication, which will cover the economic barometer, political barometer, and then in each edition of Insights, you always split it into three headers: reducing environmental impact, raising standards, and understanding and growing the market. So in each of those sections, we have a couple of briefings that we need to go through and talk to members and others about. And
each of the briefings in this edition are really absolutely relevant to the bathroom industry, aren't they?
Yeah. There's been a lot of work there. I mean, Andy's been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and myself on different aspects of some of these regulations that are coming through. So members really do need to get to grips with some of it, because there's some costs coming down the line.
Yeah, quite often in the Insights publication on the pod, we're discussing things that's kind of 2 or 3 years down the road, maybe. But this is stuff that they've really got to act on now, right? Yeah. In particular, with the packaging regulations, there's going to be some invoices landing on people's desks in October, so they really do need to be aware of what's happening. Right, let's crack straight on then. What's first on the agenda?
I think first we aren't going to talk about Insights.
Okay.
So can we first discuss some of the bigger news that's happened with the association over the past few months? June 24 was a big date for us this year, wasn't it?
It was, because as I alluded to mistakenly in the intro, we are no longer the Bathroom Manufacturers Association, the BMA, although that acronym unfortunately does trip off the tongue still by accident. We are now the Bathroom Association.
Yes, with brand new polos.
Indeed.
So I think perhaps, people will surely have seen the fact that we are the Bathroom Association and seen some of the media.
It's been everywhere on LinkedIn.
Yeah, media coverage that went on with it. And we had a big presence in installer show for the launch. But can we perhaps go through a bit of the process and the reasoning behind it? Because it is quite a stark change in terms of, colourways and the branding.
Yeah, well, obviously the most visible part of it was the launch at Installer Show, but actually this goes back a long way, and there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes in the lead up to the June launch. So if I kind of go back to the start, the BMA had a strategy in place over the last 5 years or so, where our key focus areas were the three headings that we have within the Insights publication: helping members to reduce their environmental impact, raising standards, and understanding and growing the whole market. And we decided it's about time that we had a proper review of that strategy. And broadly, the board and as a representatives of the members were happy with that direction. But what we questioned was to really achieve our mission of making bathrooms work better for people and planet. Are we hitting all of the right people as potential members? The conclusion, after lots and lots of kind of real thought about this over the course of an 18-month period, where we were supported by a fabulous agency called CMDI, our decision was actually we need to be embracing the whole bathroom value chain, whether that's distributors, independent retailers, major retailers, merchants, right the way up to the people that install the bathroom equipment and kind of design bathroom configurations. We need to kind of work with that whole group in order to really achieve our mission. So behind that includes a change in branding as well as brand, and we are now the Bathroom Association with a very nice new logo to give a bit more of a visual identity to that change in branding as well.
Yeah, and from what we gathered at Install Show with the big launch, it was broadly welcomed anyway, wasn't it? People seemed absolutely on board with it. Everyone was really happy with it. It's really impactful. It's modern. Those are the kind of things that people were saying to me at Install Show. And did you get much feedback there?
I had quite a few people saying, well, it's about time. They kind of instantly got it without much explanation, which is always reassuring and kind of a sign that you're on broadly the right track.
Yeah.
And we've had, some real early adherence to the new way. So we've welcomed our first major merchant. We've welcomed our first distributor. We've welcomed an independent retailer as well. So it's still early days, but it seems to be working and everyone gets it, which is the most important thing.
And so is there this is a whole new branding. We've got our new aims. What would you like to see in 3 years' time with the association? Is there an absolute end goal with the aims?
Well, as we always have been through the existence of the organisation, it's a member-led body, so it's constantly evolving. There's never a right job done. You know, there's always the next thing to be doing and the next thing to be developing in order to support our members. So in 3 years' time, what does success look like? A really vibrant community, including all of those different stakeholders, which I talked about, everyone engaged and involved in what we're doing. But in terms of what the actual things that we'll be working on in that 3 year horizon, that's up for the community to decide. So, but a really exciting time.
Yeah, and the fact that manufacturers is no longer in the title is certainly not reflective of what the association is about at all.
They're still at the heart of the organisation, absolutely, and that our focus is very much around the kind of products that go into the bathroom, and manufacturers are still, key to that, in terms of the right at the top of the value chain. So we still continue to serve our manufacturers, but we're also serving those other stakeholders that are vital to making the product go into the bathroom and work as well as it possibly can do for the final user. Yeah,
it's exciting times ahead for the association, and perhaps we ought to just touch on one other thing, Tom. That it's exciting times for the association.
Yeah.
Also exciting times for yourself.
Yeah, indeed. I thought we were going to get to this at the end, but let's cover it off now. You've taken me by surprise.
Sorry, Tom.
So we, I'm going to be moving on. So this is my last pod with the Bathroom Association.
My co-host is leaving.
There'll be a new co-host, I'm pleased to say. So we've been successful in appointing an absolutely amazing replacement for myself, someone called Daphne Doody-Green, who's got a real long history with the CIPD, which is a real kind of blue chip membership organisation. So I think we're all really excited to welcome Daphne. She's going to be co-presenting our Connect conference with me in September, when I'll fully hand over to her. And it's she's absolutely the right person to be kind of driving forward the Bathroom Association onto its next chapter. And I'm really excited about my next steps, and there'll be more of that on LinkedIn, no doubt. But mixed feelings, because it is a tremendous industry. I've immensely enjoyed working for the association. We've got a great team as well, even if I may say, although I'm not going to blow too much smoke.
No.
But you're a great bunch to work with.
Yeah, you can reflect that at conference. In our final farewell drinks.
Of which there'll be many.
I'm sure there will be many. If anyone is coming to conference, I can guarantee that this will be a highlight. Waving Tom goodbye. Right.
Let's crack on with the business, shall
before
we?
I start crying again. So let's go through the first bits of insights, which are usually our economic barometer and political barometer. Do you want to cover off some of the economic stuff that's been happening?
Yeah, what the economic barometer is basically a dashboard where we look back through a subsection called rear view mirror and then look at current conditions and perhaps what's on the horizon economically that manufacturers and all the other different players should be taken into consideration. So we draw on data like the PHMI, which is put together by our friends at MRA Research. And this is saying that in May this year versus May last year, sales of the plumbing merchants, this is sales out, were 0.1% up. Now, this is really basically flatlining versus last year. Also, NHBC, which is the organisation that looks after new home builders, is reporting that close to 30,000 new homes were registered to be built in Q1 this year, which is still by some stretch short of where the government would like us to be, but it seems to be heading in the right direction as well. And then the RSM housing tracker showed that the stamp duty deadline had triggered a surge in UK property transactions. And that's a really important metric for our industry because RMI, which is about 70 to 80% of our marketplace, is the driver, and RMI is closely linked to housing transactions. So that's a really important one for us. In terms of current conditions, things that we need to be taken into consideration, the current bank interest rate is 4%. Current inflation rate has risen way above the target figure, not to the kind of crazy inflation rates of a couple of years ago, but up to 3.6%. Although the bank is still reducing interest rates at the moment, despite that uplift in inflation. The Office for National Statistics puts a consumer price index. So this is the measure of inflation that includes things like motor fuels and owner-occupiers' housing costs at 4.1%. So almost double the Bank of England's target rate. The UK employment rate is 75%, so 3/4 of working age people in employment. That doesn't mean that 25% are unemployed, but that 25% are economically inactive. And that's an important metric to watch as well, because obviously the higher the employment rate, the higher disposable income, the more likely RMI works are to be completed and bathrooms installed. In terms of what's ahead, the CPA produce a quarterly construction industry forecast, and that really harnesses that there is growth this year, but it's from a very low base, and it is subject to quite volatile economic risks and uncertainties at the moment. But members can check out our bulletin to see the kind of headlines from the CPA forecast, and they can check out the member website where they can download the full construction industry forecast from the CPA. British Confederation of Industry, the CBI, also produced something called the Industrial Trends Survey, which is showing 6% reduction in expected output volumes in industry. And that's clearly a low indication of business sentiment, which is something that we need to be worried about. And consumer confidence has also slipped, looking at the metrics which we cover in the barometer. So all in all, quite a gloomy picture from an economic point of view. But Lisa, you've got the political barometer in front of you. Does that paint a slightly more positive picture in terms of the political outlook?
The political outlook is always an exciting one, and particularly now with reform polling so high. So the political barometer is brought to us by our partners at Inflact, who keep us up to speed and make sure that we're covering all of the necessary bits of legislation and trends that are happening. So the Reform UK polls they have 9 councils across the country. And they're always in the headlines. I do not need to talk about reform that much because you'll see them all in the headlines. But it is an interesting direction for Labour, who are going to need to start to figure out how to combat some of their popularity if they wish to retain staying in power. So it's been a busy quarter for us in terms of the government releasing flagship strategies. So in the last quarter, there's the 10-year infrastructure strategy. We had the spending review, which we'll cover later in this edition of the podcast, an industrial strategy, and the Cunliffe review, which we'll cover in the next edition of Insights. And then there's been major bills on planning and devolution as well.
The Cunliffe review, just for clarity, is around the water industry and basically completely changing the regulatory regime around water, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. But the government also unveiled a small business plan, which is taking action on things like late payments, a bit of regulatory reform, support for MSE exporters, and a push on digital adoption. But then specifically for our sector with the on water, so at the moment, we're currently going through another heat wave when this podcast is recorded. It's very warm in here, hence the shiny faces. Bit too much information for everybody. But there are regions within the country that are in official drought status, and it's looking quite serious for all of the country. We've had limited rain. So water stress is now putting constraints on things like planning, development, and there's policies there which the government need to look at in order to address the changing climate in terms of our water availability. So going to the Cunliffe review, that was the Independent Water Commission review. So the government accepted 88 of the recommendations that are in that bill, and we'll cover this more in the next edition of Insights. But it is a huge piece of the recommendations I've taken on board are quite impactful because it looks at water efficiency and reuse. One of the things that we talk about are recirculating showers, and one of the positives out of water scarcity might be that we start to see more of an adoption of things like recirculating showers if the regulations can allow for those sorts of things. But we'll cover that more in the next edition. But then public toilets have also been making quite an impact. I mean, I've seen various news media on TV talking about various toilet blocks that are being shut down. But this has been a huge issue that's been going on for a long time. And I know, Tom, you were... You attended a parliamentary drop-in, didn't you, about this?
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit later on about the Legalise Loos campaign, because this is all part of that. And, a little bit of progress to report.
Oh, yeah, which is all good. And that's pretty much where we are on the political barometer.
So we've covered the Rebrand, we've covered the Economic Barometer and the Political Barometer.
So Tom, let's go into our Reducing Environmental Impact section. We have 2 briefings in there. And the first one is a snappily titled Independent Review of DEFRA's Regulatory Landscape.
Yeah, it's a snappy title, as you say. This is something which the Labour government commissioned when they first came into power. It's a review by Dan Corrie, who's a former member of Parliament, which basically he was asked to look at the suite of regulations that exist around the environment, because the feeling was that they weren't delivering a restoration of nature, and they also weren't delivering economic growth, which was one of the key priorities for the incoming government. So that review has now reported, and it's come up with several key themes. So shall I run through them quickly?
Yeah, because there's, I think the key themes are important, and it's getting that right balance between ensuring that business can grow whilst we're not also having a bonfire of regulations around the environment.
And it's very much the kind of second of the key themes is around simplifying and modernising regulations, but he does it in a big way fall short of recommending a bonfire of regulation. You know, the assumption that Corrie arrives at is that actually regulation in itself isn't a bad thing, but it's got to be proportionate, and that there will be a review of each area of regulation. This is a key area for bathroom, the bathroom sector, because we're governed by regulations that come out of DEFRA, so the water fittings regulations being a prime example. My issue with this whole review is it's all a little bit high level, and what it will actually mean in practice for such an under-resourced department, I'm a little bit sceptical that they're going to get anywhere near the recommendations, if I'm honest.
So do I. I mean, the news that's broke recently is that DEFRA are cutting 750 jobs.
Yeah. So in terms of a proportionate review of regulations, who's going to do that? So let's take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, the other recommendations which Corrie has come out with. So that was the second theme. The first was around changing the focus of regulation onto outcomes, so and enabling regulators to exercise discretion, which is a perfectly kind of reasonable shift, as I say. The practicalities of doing that, if you're going to give officials discretion, first of all, you've got to have officials, and the department is having an axe taken to it following the comprehensive spending review. So that's a concern. Also, businesses like certainty, and discretion, whilst very welcome, sometimes can mean a lack of certainty if there's inconsistent approaches taken by regulators. So double-edged sword, that one. The third of the themes is around better regulatory compliance through trust and technology. Again, that seems to entail quite a large investment in government IT infrastructure and technology. Is DEFRA in a position to actually embark on that sort of project? I think we can all get behind much better compliance. One of the frustration of bathroom manufacturers is that, you know, as large brands, they do comply because it's part of their license to operate. But there are unbranded manufacturers that kind of fly under the radar that don't have such a vigorous approach to compliance. Fourth theme is around unlocking regulation, serving to unlock green investment and innovation into green products. Well, that's very much motherhood and apple pie. Who'd disagree with that? And then the fifth theme, which emerges similar to that theme 3, really, is around accelerating digital transformation and kind of shaking off the analog system, which is used by DEFRA regulators. And I think that's something, looking at ANTI, we probably see through the non-statutory quasi-regulators like the certification schemes that certify to DEFRA's regulations too. So we'd welcome that digital transformation to be sure. Something which I've missed off there is that as part of that kind of unlocking of development is the notion of sandboxes. What are they, Lisa?
So these are test sandboxes. So I'm finding this a very big double-edged sword. It's quite exciting that developers will be able to test products, test theories within a development, but then where is the environmental protection? It slightly worries me. The big positive with these sandboxes is that obviously we've talked about drought already. We've talked about the fact that water scarcity is gradually getting worse and worse. So for developers, especially sort of housing development, they're going to need to start looking at the water efficient technologies side. I always come back to the recirculating showers as you know, we need to be able to see things like this being used within development. So on the positive, yes, these sandboxes could allow for very innovative water efficient technologies to be used and then gauge the results from that, which could then inform other developments. So that's the exciting bit about it.
Ring fence developments that can basically diverge
Yeah.
from existing regulation for green innovation purposes, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking instantly of the work that we're doing around trying to open up the market to recirculating
Yeah.
showers. That could be a real great opportunity. in this.
It could be huge. But then, my kind of concern is, well, how many developments are going to be able to say, oh, well, we're just going to not bother with regulations this time because we want to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
How far does that go? Is it constrained? That's my worry. And then that'll be where the environmental groups become more and more concerned. If the bypassing, shall I say, of regulations enables more development, then that's a great thing. But we can't afford to then not think about how water is going to be used within that development.
I think there is the mechanism within the current water fitting regulations that can help with that, because it's a relaxation. It's rather than bending the rules. So the water companies will keep a very tight control on that. So
the Corrie review is just a review at this stage.
Yes,
So we'll have to wait and see how the government actually respond to it in terms of moving forward. So watch this space, and it will surely be something that we cover in future editions of Insights. So let's move on, Lisa, to another. This is a real area of quite intense activity from the association, led by yourself and Andy. So I'm going to hand over to you for this, and that's packaging extended producer responsibility.
Yes.
Give us, first of all, a really high-level summary of what is this all about and what's it mean for manufacturers.
Okie dokie. So really high level, because we've covered this before in editions of Insights. So anybody who needs to know, please go back through past editions. So packaging extended producer responsibility is huge packaging reforms. Basically, the polluter pays. So any business involved in producing packaging will have to pay for its household disposal. So if it ends up in a bin, a wheelie bin on the curbside, the producer of that packaging has to pay. That's, in the most simplistic terms, is how I can describe it. And businesses are affected. There are two sort of groups of businesses. So it's small producers and then large producers. And they each have differing kind of rules that they need to play by. So the large producers are those who will have a turnover of more than 2 million and produce over 50 tonnes of packaging a year. So they have to report their packaging, and they are subject to fees as well. It's quite complicated. I don't particularly want to go into it now. People can look at past editions, where we've covered it in more detail. But basically, the data they must report data for July and December 2024 by April the 1st this year. So if you haven't done, you really need to have done. And then data for January and June 2025 is by October the 1st this year. They need to conduct recyclability assessments of household packaging using this thing called RAM, which is the recyclability assessment methodology. And it assigns a red, amber, green, depending on your the materials used in your packaging. So the harder to recycle, the more your fees will be, is basically it. So the aim is to ensure that those producing packaging are then using the most recyclable packaging that they possibly can. So there's a conundrum in that business and commercial waste was explicitly stated to be out of scope of these new regulations. However, the construction sector, along with the medicine sector, food and drink, have all found themselves within scope. So it's all to do with the definition of household waste. Let me read it. So if a product is not directly sold to the end user, so it passes through an intermediary, like a merchant or the like, then the packaging waste associated with that must be reported as household waste.
But it's not household waste.
No, it isn't. But it is, according to this. So we have a conundrum here where we know that the majority of construction materials do not end up in wheelie bins. Anything that is delivered on a pallet is unlikely to end up in a household wheelie bin because of the sheer weight. So We've been working, Andy, as well. You've been working with organisations like the CPA, who've been trying to work with DEFRA to try. The big aim is to find a way of rewording the regulation so that construction materials aren't in scope. That's the aim. Through various meetings that we've had, we've discussed all sorts of different ways of how we can do this. Or do we assign ratios to certain products that we know there's a certain ratio that goes to DIY, therefore ends up in a household bin, as opposed to ratios that we know go through merchants. And it's incredibly complicated. There's been flurries of activity, haven't there, from DEFRA, where it's been peaks and troughs of, it looks like we're getting somewhere and then it all goes quiet. Yes. And then it looks like we're getting somewhere and then it all goes quiet. The chances of finding a solution for year 2 are now becoming increasingly unlikely, and we're working towards year 3. So members will be affected by this unfairly, we believe, but they will be. And is there anything you wanted to add with this?
It's only the I think the concern from members is obviously the proportionality of it, because by being in scope, they have to report all the packaging. And fair enough, if it's going to a retailer or ends up in a retailer and it's sold, or it's that sort of packaging, that's fine. But most of this packaging is removed on install, and install is mostly professional. So the argument from our point of view is that this is professionally installed, and therefore it'll be removed, it'll end up in a skip, it'll end up being removed and disposed of, or should be removed by the contractor. Yeah. So it's the proportionality that we are captured in the whole thing, and therefore have got to pay the full amount on all the packaging that's produced. So it's that, as I say, proportionality that is the concern. They don't mind paying what's fair, but this...
Yeah. It's just for clarity as well, it's products sold under their brand. So any product which is sold to a merchant for own brand purposes as an OEM wouldn't be covered by this, would it? Yeah. It will be, that will be the responsibility of the merchant.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's pick on a particular product category that we're especially worried about, and that's shower enclosures. Yeah. Why is it a particular issue for shower enclosures, and what are we trying to do about it as an association?
So the packaging that is used on shower trays is big. They're big items, they're heavy items. It can't be removed before delivery, which was one approach. Because it's there for safety. It's a piece of glass, and we've got to be careful. And when delivered on site, it's got to be handled with care. So the packaging is there for safety. Manufacturers spent a lot of time reducing the use of polystyrene in these products. So it's now much greener than it ever was. So that packaging as well, it's rare that it's done other than by a professional install.
These are big, heavy products, aren't they?
They're big, heavy products. And the other point is that this packaging, because it's big, physically won't fit into a bin.
Yeah.
So you can't actually put it into the bin. So therefore, it's not in the household waste stream. So we are talking to DEFRA, and we are trying to understand how that approach fits into their definitions. Because whilst the top level scope brings us into scope, there are a set of rules behind that we're trying to get our heads round, and that's where we're engaging to just try and understand and how this fits in. So we believe, for all the reasons that we've just mentioned, it should be excluded from the reporting. But we'd rather run that past DEFRA and make sure that they are comfortable with that and understand the reasoning behind it. So we're not trying to get them to change the rules in this instance. What we're trying to do is make sure that they understand how the reporting is done. And as long as manufacturers, and we believe we can, report the correct amount of packaging that is possibly going to end up in a waste bin, but we can correctly understand the channels that it's going through. So it does go to a contractor, or it goes to a private company, or it ends up on a building site, that is all understood and supported with evidence. So as long as we've got the evidence, in theory, it should be a reporting subject. But we need to run it past DEFRA.
The theory is if you can evidence, then you won't be in scope. And it's evidencing it that's the issue, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
My problem with this, and something which I've been really keen to point out to political stakeholders, is, for shower enclosures at least, this is going to drive some really perverse behaviours.
Yeah.
Because it works on weight. So putting aside the RAM, polystyrene is by a factor of quite considerable number lighter than the cardboard equivalent. It's not recyclable, but actually it's probably going to cost less to use the more environmentally detrimental material for packaging these products in the future. So a real perverse outcome of something which is intended to drive more sustainable behaviours in business. So it's just not going to do what it intends to do. And in the process, it's going to cost manufacturers a considerable amount of money. And, we're talking, for some producers, high seven figures.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, you guys continue to really push this and do a good job on behalf of members to try and represent their views. But it's a critical one, isn't it?
Yeah, it would be good to see some positive movement to at least get into a level playing field with this.
So let's move on to the raising standards section of the pod. And new hospitals program. Andy, this is straight back to you because this is one of your babies. Tell us about what the relevance is to water fittings manufacturers of this big government initiative.
Yeah, I think if we go back a little bit, there's two approaches that we have. When we talk about the new hospital program, that is the building of new hospitals, and we're not talking specifically much about that today, but that is engagement with the purchasing team at the NHP, who are very interested in products that actually help with and for hospitals, and in particular, there's a big drive at the minute, and I think it's worth talking at this point about the pathogen concerns that are really coming through from it's patient care, it's vulnerable areas, it's vulnerable patients in specific areas, but obviously there's a knock-on effect to other areas, water supply, etc. So the NHP are interested in the technologies. It's been a great opportunity for our members to talk to them about their specific beneficial products in these environments. And then the other side of it is we want to obviously engage with NHS estates, which is the other side, which is the actual guys that develop the rules for the buildings that they're actually building. So if we skip to the specific topic that there is a big problem at the minute with infection control. The one that keeps being cited, and I'm going to read it off the sheet, is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which, as we understand, it actually resists antibiotic treatment, post-treatment. So there is a bigger drive towards actually ruling this out. Now,
and this pathogen can live in water, can't it? That's the issue. That's why it's relevant to us.
And it's also relevant. Yeah, and it's not just that one. It's also your Legionella, Pseudomonas, all the things that we actually are aware of as well. Now, so skipping forward, then August 24, NHS Estates released a technical bulletin which made certain recommendations about general infection control. And one of those that certainly we focused on was the concern that they declared that wet testing or water left in product was one of the main causes of these diseases getting into hospitals. It was very interesting. We've had a couple of meetings. We've engaged with NHS estates with members, and we've had a few discussions because obviously the way that certain products are tested is with water. Particularly on thermostatic products, where you want to make sure that the interaction of the element with the rest of the fitting is doing what it's supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So hence why it's tested with water, just to make sure that everything's working properly before it goes into the market. So the declaration was in the technical bulletin that they would prefer dry testing. So basically testing with air. So we've had a couple of conversations, and without getting into the detail, it's quite difficult and more expensive for manufacturers to actually complete this process. Mm-hmm. So from our point of view, it's been a great opportunity to talk to the experts. At the last meeting, which myself and Lisa attended, there was a really interesting discussion about a current hospital and how they actually narrowed down. So it's not just we're just going to take this as read. The guy that was actually part of the water safety group within the hospital actually ran through the process that and how they narrowed it down to the end fittings. Yeah. Which was, I think, a surprise to us all. That
it was so in depth, wasn't it? And it
quite scary.
It took months and months and months and months. Once they even found where the source of the original kind of bacterial infection, it took months and months of constantly flushing the systems through to eradicate it. And this is in a brand new hospital. It's been built. There's nobody inside it. And it's already rife with bacterial infections, potentially. And that's the scary part. It only takes the slightest amount of moisture, and these things are just relentless, aren't they?
So we do a bit of a plug. We're going to continue on this agenda as an association. Yeah. On the 16th of September at Insights Live, we've got some guest speakers talking about how how water is monitored in healthcare facilities. We've got a guest speaker talking about disinfection of water in healthcare facilities. So we're going to continue to learn and get better in this area, but an exciting area of work. So just before we move on, Andy, what's GS1?
GS1 is going back to, we defined the difference between the NHP, which is the actual purchasing team. They prefer, it's not illegal or a requirement, but GS1 is a globally recognized system which uniquely identifies product and the supporting data for that product. What that means is that when the purchasing team look at that product, all the information that they need to know, and specifically about the hygienic requirements, is there through a barcode or a QR code and available for that purchasing team to pick on straight away. So it's not an actual requirement, but it does help in the purchasing process.
Okay, good stuff. So all about traceability.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on to our second and final briefing on raising standards, which is about the EU CPR. And once again, I'm going to hand over to you guys to handle this, because you've had quite an in-depth time.
Yeah, so we've covered the new EU CPR and in various editions of Insights before, and we've looked at things like the digital product passport. So the idea behind this briefing, perhaps need to explain the idea behind it, was how the new standard within EU CPR are developed. And so, Andy, you explained to me how new standards are developed, and the fact that the new EU CPR, in order to have a CE marking, it's now introducing new environmental aspects within the CPR standards, and it's the environmental side which is the new bit. So things need to have a sort of recyclability, circularity, those sorts of things. And that's what the EU is trying to do, isn't it, with this additional bit. Now, when you explained all this to me, initially my brain turned to gravy and fell out of my ears because it's complicated. There are more abbreviations in this thing than in a teenager's text message. It's complicated. So initially I was a little bit dumbfounded. But then when I sat back and looked at it, it's actually reasonably straightforward, which is what we've tried to do in this briefing, is to explain how the standards are being developed, how they are normally developed, and how you specifically are trying to speed up the process, which could take up to 12 years.
I think we've got to go back a bit further. So just very briefly, so the Construction Products Directive was introduced many years ago. I think it was 2013. I might be wrong on that. But that had a certain set of rules and way that the standards were developed. The issue is that then changed to the Construction Product Regulation, the previous version. But the difficulty was that no matter how hard we tried, and I'm summarising here, no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't get the standards written in a format that could be harmonised. So the net result was that, as we know, the CE mark is put on your product for cross-border trading, and it demonstrates that it's met a minimum amount of requirements. The issue was that because the Construction Product Directive had a set of rules written about each product, which was the mandate. That mandate was out of date, and under the CPR, we couldn't conform and approve, or the EU Commission couldn't legally confirm those standards. Net result was that we're actually declaring our products to a declaration of performance to a standard that's probably 3 versions out of date.
Yeah.
So bear that in mind. Then you come to the new construction products. Now, as you said, we've explained what it is, what it's about, and the elements within it. But what we were trying to illustrate was, I represent British Standards Institute on a number of committees in Europe. Those being for sanitary ware products, and I know that Tom goes crackers when I start quoting numbers at him, but sanitary ware products, and particularly taps and fittings. So taps and fittings are a separate thing, but certainly the products that are currently covered by the Construction Products Regulations, those harmonised standards are out of date. The new CPR has been introduced, and this gives us the opportunity really to, I suppose, to do a bit of tidying up. But it's a long road to get there. So ideally, we want to put our declaration of performance to a current standard, which is relevant and works properly for each of the products that we have to regulate. So what the CPR did, as you've already explained in your briefings, is it introduced elements of the environmental and the DPP, the Digital Product Passport, which contains all the information around that. We know about that, so let's separate that out. So what is the Bathroom Association and the industry generally working towards? So we talk about the CPR acquis. The acquis is a board of people who specifically define the rules for each product. And they will work with the Commission to develop, in conjunction with the technical experts, a SREC, which is a standard request. And that is produced by the Commission. A lot of people think it's produced by SEN, but it's not. Sorry, SEN is the European standards body. but it's actually produced by the Commission, and then it will be issued to a standards writing body, not necessarily SEN, but most likely. So, and that standard request includes the environmental information and the requirements of the digital product passport to be written into the standard. So all of a sudden the standard becomes relevant with the help of experts. So where are we up to? So within the two committees, which is the showers, sanitary ware, shower enclosures, etc., all those products that we deal with, we are producing a document under the fast track system, which is a perfectly legal way of, if you like, presenting the CPR, ACWI and the Commission with a defined, and it's a structured document, 48 pages. I had loads of fun filling it in, so you can imagine I'm quite familiar with it.
Yes.
But the 48-page document basically defines the requirements for the product group. So it's not for a specific product, so it's not for a shower tray. It's actually for all the products within the group. That's why it's such a big task. So our group is the sanitary ware. We are producing this document in, I chair the shower enclosures, shower and baths working group within SEN. And then there's also the sanitary ware group, which is headed up by another chairperson, who we are both producing the single document, but as you can imagine, we're working within our groups. That document will then be presented and signed off, hopefully. I'm sure that'll be a bit of back and forth. We will then be able to get a defined SREC or standard request that will allow us to write the standards and get them harmonised and agreed through the Commission, and we can get them into the European Journal, which is the official way of making that harmonised standard.
So just for members' assurances, we've got a jargon buster, and we really boil this down to kind of top lines in the next edition of Insights, don't we?
Yeah, it's alphabet soup half the time. So there's jargon busters in there. We try to make it as straight. If I can understand it, then everyone's fine.
It's tough going.
Yeah.
All of this is happening, obviously, on the other side of the English Channel in Brussels, but it is of relevance here in the UK.
Yeah.
Not just because of Northern Ireland and the Northern Ireland Protocol, but also the UK government has said that CE marking for construction products will continue
through the Green Paper.
Infinitum. So this is really of key importance, even on this side of the channel here in the UK.
Yeah. Right then, Tom, shall we move on to understanding and growing the market section? So when we first started the podcast earlier, we just discussed a little bit about legalising loos, public toilets in decline. And so one of the briefings in Insights this time is all about legalising loos, and it's a growing campaign to secure more investment for public facilities, which I think we all would agree needs to be improved. So can you explain a little bit about the campaign and how we've got involved?
Yes, certainly. This is something that I'm particularly kind of passionate about, really. It boils down to the fact that here in the UK, we've lost 40% of public toilets since the turn of the millennium. And, this is a very basic need, isn't it? The need for a clean and safe toilet to maintain your dignity in public space, and particularly important for people with particular needs. It's something that we found during the pandemic, when most public loos and the businesses that have increasingly kind of filled the gulf in terms of toilet provision were closed. Actually, people just could not get out there. It did put a lot of people on what we call the loo leash. So over the last few years, the association has been very active in trying to kind of boost investment in public loos. And over the course of the last 6 months or so, we've teamed up with our friends at the British Toilet Association. So Raymond Martin and his team of volunteers, and now an increasingly broad coalition of civic groups to lobby politicians in order to try and create an environment where there is a much more healthy approach to the provision of public loos in the UK. So by way of kind of background on this, we started out with a report in 2022 that we produced as an association called Nowhere to Go. And this was based on survey data working with Opinion, nationally representative sample, which showed that the perception of local toilet provision among the British public was abysmally low. So asked to rate the local provision out of 10, the average across the country was 4.2. So, if you were a business on TripAdvisor, you'd be head in your hands with that sort of rating. Only 24% of people believe there are enough toilets in their area, and 43% believe there are insufficient facilities for people with disabilities. Cleanliness, safety, and just availability and accessibility were flagged as the major concerns. So we've got to do something about this. 81% of adults, older adults, say they're more likely to visit destinations if they can know that they can rely on the toilet facilities there. So it's a big driver for inward investment into communities, and there's big political concern about the state of the high street at the moment. Part of that, and probably I would suggest an underestimated part of that, is the fact that so many people are on the loo leash when they go to their local high street. People. If a business does offer out their public loos for non-patrons, that doesn't mean that the average person is going to be comfortable doing that. I know through personal experience, I always feel a compulsion to purchase something if I use the facilities in a cafe, for instance. So this, what we've stitched together is a really collaborative campaign. We are seeking support from the local government minister, Alex Norris, and we've been very fortunate to meet with him and his officials on multiple occasions now, along with our colleagues in the coalition. And we've also held a parliamentary briefing for quite a broad collection of MPs and peers that are interested in this agenda. And they get the political salience of it. They've all had constituents come to them and say, I can't go out anymore because there aren't public toilets on my high street, and it's in all four corners of the country. So there is political salience behind it. The local government minister, Alex, has taken ownership of it, and he says, we want to do something about this. In opposition, we were successful in working with Alex to get some amendments to the Levelling Up Bill, which called for a national review. It called for a legal requirement on local authorities to put together a local plan. Doesn't mean necessarily they'd be delivering it out of their council their funding, but they should at least be thinking about how the provision works in their area. And it called for a national scheme for business rates relief for businesses that visibly offer up their facilities to consumers. So, we've got a head of steam behind our campaign. I'm particularly confident that we'll get there on that legal requirement, hence the Legalise Loos tagline for the campaign. But something that I think the association will want to keep on rolling with, and we seem to be edging closer to a really positive outcome here.
Yeah, it is interesting that the local government minister is really pushing this, because there's, as you say, there's also that need for looking at, if we want to revitalise the high street, then having the conveniences there is absolutely vital. And we had a meeting with some DEFRA officials discussing revitalising the high street. It was very sort of high level. But yeah, they took our thoughts on board as well, how to revitalise the house street. Says we need the loos in there.
Well, obviously, public toilets come at cost. They don't come for free. And as we'll come on to shortly, that is weighing heavily on all politicians and officials' mind at the moment. But for us, it's what's the cost of not investing in these facilities and not providing them, because I think they're much greater from a social, from a health, and from a regeneration point of view.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to our final briefing then. So the Comprehensive Spending Review earlier this year threw out some interesting results. Tom, you've put this together. Do you want to go through what the Comprehensive Spending Review is going to mean for our members broadly?
Yeah, so just a reminder really on what the Comprehensive Spending Review is. It sets out the departmental spending of government organisations across a 3-year period. So this kind of is on a layer over the budget. So this says what the government's going to spend, and then the budget says how they're going to spend, how they're going to pay for it. So what we've seen in this latest CSR announced by the Chancellor is a big reduction in certain departments' departmental spending. We raised earlier on in the pod that DEFRA is probably the worst hit department, and obviously a key department for us in terms of our regulatory interest. Day-to-day departmental spending increases across government are only 1.7%, so well below inflation. And many departments have taken real terms cuts in their core operating budgets. And obviously, that ring-fence protection for things like defence and health puts the pressure very much in other areas. Some positive news, though. The government has confirmed £39 billion for a 10-year affordable homes programme. So for manufacturers supplying particularly the affordable housing market, that will be a bit of a primer for you. Alongside that is 4.8 million, which is going to be used to underpin financial transactions and unlock private house building. Yet to see the starts figure creeping up, but there is quite a bit of confidence out there that will start to have an effect in Q4 onwards. 2.5 billion has been allocated to an east-west rail scheme, which should unlock further housing development in that Oxford to Cambridge corridor. And anything to boost house building is very much welcome within the bathroom industry. Aligned with that also, we've said that it's not just planning that is holding back house building. There's also the skills agenda. And the government does appear to have listened to that and allocated over £500 million towards the training of 60,000 skilled construction workers over the next 4 years. Other things that are covered, Warm Homes Plan, which will boost RMI, not bathroom RMI, but if someone's having housing works to increase the energy efficiency of their home, it does increase the likelihood that they'll also have ancillary works done to things like their bathrooms. So that's a welcome piece of funding. But I'm going to return to this cut to DEFRA, because some of the things that we've talked about most frequently on this podcast and in BMA Insights Live meetings and so on are things that DEFRA are working on. Drinking Water Directive, mandatory water efficiency labelling, things like the unlocking recirculating showers. These are all covered by quite a small group of officials within DEFRA, and my concern is that the cuts to that department are really going to take the wind out of the sails on those various different issues. We need to make progress on them if we're going to achieve the environmental outcomes that the country needs. We need to make progress on these things to unlock housing, because without greater water efficiency, we're going to run out of water resources. We need to make progress on these things for our sector to have certainty in order to be able to invest and grow. That is a big concern and something that we'll need to watch closely for in the future. But that is a bit of a potted summary of the CSR and the most relevant parts of it to bathroom manufacturers.
Yeah, I think we will probably keep coming back to how DEFRA are faring in order to push ahead on various regulations. It seems to be something that seems like a thread through a lot of what we're discussing, and I'm sure it will into the future. So that wraps up what we've got in this next edition of Insights. But we always use this podcast to also inform members about what the association itself has been up to through our update pages. Do you want me to kick off, Tom? So we'll look at this is under 3 headers. So we'll kick off with reducing environmental impacts, and we'll go to April the 1st, where the Association Secretariat met with DEFRA's Martin Woolhead and Katie Smith, who leads the water efficiency team there, to discuss mandatory water efficiency labelling, leaky loos and AUK4.
On the 9th of April, DEFRA confirmed that business-to-business packaging will remain in scope of the PEPR regulations, despite extensive engagement by the Bathroom Association and other allied trade bodies.
On April 29, the Association writes to DEFRA officials to request a meeting and seek guidance regarding implementing the packaging regulation scheme and its effects on shower enclosure manufacturers.
On April the 30th, the association was cited in a World Trade Organization paper on environmental goods and services on climate adaptation in the water sector, with the Windsor Declaration being cited.
And on May the 15th, the association meets with PAC UK, which is the government's agency tasked with implementing the packaging reforms. And we wanted to highlight the impact on shower enclosure manufacturers, as we've alluded to. And PAC UK are going to discuss our points with the regulator.
On May the 20th, I chaired a panel discussion at the Taps and Valves Europe Congress on water resilience, and I was joined by Fiona Felix from Hansgrohe, John Watson from IAPMO, Lee Cartwright from the Unified Water Label, and Sebastian Murray from Euro.
And then on May the 22nd, the association requests a meeting with Kevin Hollenrake, who's the Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. And we want to discuss water efficiency solutions to support his campaign for sustainable community-focused house building in North Yorkshire.
So moving on to the second section, raising standards. On April the 1st, the Bathroom Association met with DEFRA officials requesting that AUK4 be prioritised. This is the new regulator specification for backflow protection on WCs. They agreed to seek clarification from the drinking water team and provide an update on progress.
On April the 3rd, the association hosts an online technical meeting to discuss the new NHS New Hospital programme and provide comments on the ongoing briefs for hand wash station fixtures, fittings and equipment for ensuite bathroom toilets and showers.
On April the 10th, the association circulated its response to the CPR green paper in order for members to feedback and also contributed to the CPA's draft response.
On April the 16th, the association writes to the Water Minister, Emma Hardy. We're expressing strong concerns over the government's intention to develop the standalone UK water efficiency label under the proposed mandatory water efficiency labelling scheme.
On May the 7th, our guest, Andy McLean, responds to a PFAS inquiry supporting a proportionate, risk-based approach to PFAS regulation.
And on May the 16th, the association writes to government raising the issue of relying on the interim voluntary agreement for backflow protection for WCs while we're still awaiting the sign-off of the AUK4.
And on May 19th, the association submits a response to the government's green paper on the CPR reform, and Andy contributes to the CPA response as a BSI and SEND specialist outside of his Bathroom Association role.
And then June 24th, the Future of Water Theatre and Stall Show. Andy, you've been busy. You were chairing a discussion on changes in regulations and why certification matters.
Moving on to our final section then, understanding and growing the market. On April the 9th, the Bathroom Association requests member input into the government's response concerning President Trump's universal 10% tariffs.
And Amy Kirk, our engagement director at the association, she attended Chamber of Commerce session examining how businesses can enter new USA markets successfully.
Yeah, talk about rubbish timing. May the 8th, the association requests members participate in its new data pooling initiative, which collates monthly sales data to produce detailed market performance reports by category, volume and value.
And Jane Blakeborough, our research manager at the association, presented a webinar detailing the latest research regarding understanding the merchant.
That's available on our members' website.
Yes.
On May the 22nd, the association presents its Bathroom Design and Innovation Report 24 to 25 via a webinar where the latest trends are highlighted.
On June 16, Ofwat appoints a representative from our association to its Strategic Advisory Board for the Water Efficiency Fund. The regulator agrees that input on product development and commercialisation is critical to that fund's success.
On June the 24th, marking the opening of the Future of Water Theatre at Installer Show, myself and our president, Craig Baker, detail the evolution of the Bathroom Manufacturers Association into the Bathroom Association, setting out the direction and ambitions to unite the whole industry.
And then on June 25, again at Installer Show, Jane Blakeborough, our research manager, she hosted a panel discussion on bathroom trends and how to elevate bathrooms in 2025 and beyond.
Well, we're certainly a bunch of busy bees, aren't we?
We are a bunch of busy bees. So that sort of covers that quarter's association activity in brief, not in full, I have to say.
Yeah, there's a lot more
more
besides, isn't there? But we've only got a certain amount of time on this podcast, haven't we?
Tom, this is going to be our last podcast.
It's an emotional signing off.
I hope so.
I feel like it's very much the end of an era.
Yeah, it's been lovely to have you here anyway, and wish you all the best for the future. Thank you so much.
An absolute pleasure, and as I say, great working with you two guys, with the rest of the team, and with a fabulous membership. So hopefully, I'll stay in touch with you all as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.